This video was developed to help you understand some common installation techniques and to answer many of the questions that you may have. We'll be giving you this information in several sections. We'll talk about how to prepare the subfloor on which you're working and how to correctly measure and mix SL150 for best results. We'll also give you some step-by-step guidelines for the actual installation of SL150 over both the cement subfloor and over metal lath on plywood. First, let's focus on subfloor inspection and preparation. Prior to the actual installation of SL150, you must ensure that the surface is clean and free from loose materials such as oil, grease, sealers, curing compounds, waxes, and all other surface contaminants that may inhibit a proper bond. If necessary, you can mechanically roughen smooth or polished concrete, terrazzo, or existing tile by scarifying or shot blasting. The recommended surface profile is that of a light broom finish. CSP4, as defined by ICRI, is recommended. Bostik SL150 is very fluid once mixed. To prevent underlayments from seeping through holes in the floor, through pipes or penetrations, fill these openings with caulking, mastic, thinset, or grout prior to your application. You can ensure that the material will be applied only where it's intended by blocking thresholds, air intakes, vents, or other wide openings with a dam modified to fit the space. Such barricades should then be caulked to prevent the underlayment from seeping. Areas of the substrate which are gouged or cracked should be filled or patched using Bostik Fast Patch 102 or a fast-setting thinset mortar. Keep in mind that the ambient and slab temperatures must be at least 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but not more than 95 degrees Fahrenheit, both during the application and for 24 hours once it's been completed. When preparing a floor with self-leveler, the objective is simply to cover the highest point of the floor with as little as 1/8 inch of underlayment, while at the same time eliminating voids, slants, holes, and bird baths to create a nearly flawless substrate. To begin, identify the highest point in the room or your section of the job by using a straight edge, a string, or a laser, and then mark that point. Next, you'll need to determine the required depth of the underlayment, which will raise the floor level to 1/8 inch above the established high point. This can be done with either a water level or a laser level. If the depth is substantial, 3/4 of an inch or greater, as here in our example, it may be helpful to set concrete screws as guides. In some situations, it may also be helpful to broadcast pea gravel into the extremely low areas. Pea gravel will help prevent shrinkage on thick pours and will also reduce the amount of underlayment required to fill the space. Now that you've identified the depth of your SL150 application and have ensured that the surface is clean, patched, and all of your penetrations or openings are prepped, your next step is to prime the substrate using Bostik's Universal Primer. After you follow the instructions on the container, Universal Primer may be broom applied, rolled, or diluted 1:1 and then sprayed. If you choose to spray the primer, it should be broomed into the surface with a soft bristled broom so that the pores are completely filled and you're not left with any puddles. If you choose to dilute and spray the Universal Primer, 2 coats may be required in order to apply a sufficient amount, especially on porous surfaces. An insufficient amount of Universal Primer may cause pinholes to form in the underlayment. If you have frequent self-leveling jobs, it's handy to keep a roller and some primer in a 5-gallon bucket. This way you can simply remove the lid and screw on the broom handle. When priming is complete, replace the roller in the bucket and put the lid back on. Within 2 to 4 hours, the primer will dry to a transparent film. During this drying process, you can prepare for your installation. By now, you should have established your coverage area. Each bag of SL150 will cover approximately 30 square feet at a depth of 1/8 inch. With this knowledge, you can calculate roughly how much material will be required. Open your bags, prepare water and mixing buckets or barrels, and stage these items conveniently so that you can work smoothly. Be sure to take a minute and plan where you will begin the installation and where you will exit the space. Use 5.5 quarts of water per bag of SL150. Always measure the water added. Don't mix by feel. Overwatering will harm the performance of the underlayment. A common sense way to avoid mistakes is to measure out exactly 5.5 quarts of water. Pour this into a plastic bucket and then drill a hole through the bucket directly on the water line. Make sure you always add the powder to the liquid and then mix thoroughly with a high-powered drill at 500 to 1000 RPMs using an appropriate mixing paddle. When the material reaches the consistency of a creamy liquid that is free of lumps, the product will be ready to apply in your work area. If, as you mix the material, you find that the consistency requires additional water, add it sparingly by squeezing a wet sponge over the pail or barrel. Remember, too much water will harm the mix. Pour the underlayment as soon as possible, keeping the process in motion until the entire area is covered. As you spread SL150 or work it into a pea gravel bed, you'll appreciate how easily it flows, and generally speaking, the underlayment will level and heal better on its own. SL150 may be spread using a metal straightedge, finish trowel, squeegee, or a similar tool. In our example, we chose to use an underlayment rake to push the self-leveler where it is needed. The rake is also good to use in order to work the material into any pea gravel that you may have laid down. SL150 can be effectively applied on large jobs with an underlayment pump. Be sure that you adjust the water meter to correspond with the 5.5 quarts per bag of SL150. Pump the material directly onto the floor and use a long-handled spreader or appropriate tool to smooth the material to suit your requirements. Be careful not to cover or bridge either expansion or control joints. The job we've shown in our example was approximately 750 square feet. The floor was badly damaged and very out of level. The process of preparing, priming, broadcasting pea gravel, and applying the SL150 took a crew of 4 about 3 hours to complete. Once your installation is complete, allow the material to cure by avoiding excessive heat, cold, or drafty conditions. Radiant heat systems should be turned off for a minimum of 7 days after the underlayment is poured. The floor may be exposed to light foot traffic in 4 to 5 hours. Do not damp cure or apply sealers or curing compounds. The time it takes for SL150 to dry and cure will vary depending upon how thick you've poured the material, the temperature, and the humidity. Be sure to take all of these into consideration before you install any floor covering. You should allow SL150 to cure until the substrate meets the dryness requirements as established by your floor covering manufacturer. Self-leveling cement underlayments are a traditional tool used by floor covering installers to prepare substrates for sheet vinyl, vinyl composition tile, rubber tile, and commercial carpet. When considering a ceramic tile installation over plywood, traditional methods of floor preparation such as pulling mud or a mortar bed, using a cement backer board or a proprietary plastic isolation mat in conjunction with thin-set mortar are extremely functional, but can be somewhat labor-intensive and require especially skilled mechanics. Many ceramic contractors achieve better results far more efficiently using high-performance cement self-levelers such as Bostik SL150. Cement self-levelers used in conjunction with stapled lathe is an alternative to cement board or isolation mat systems. This is extremely effective for tile installations over 3/4-inch plywood subfloors utilizing joists spaced no more than 16 inches on center, or engineered trusses spaced no more than 24 inches on center. And the really good news is that these installations are now an industry standard and recognized by the TCA. Such installations are limited to residential and light-duty applications. And one additional note, natural stone tiles require deflection that does not exceed L/720, so this method may not be suitable for marble, limestone, travertine, granite, or other natural stone tiles. Be sure the subfloor is securely fastened to the joists or trusses. You can use screws or ring shank nails to secure any loose areas. A pneumatic nail gun or auto-feed screw gun can help make this process move ahead quite quickly. Fill all seams, holes, plumbing, and electrical penetrations to prevent the underlayment from leaking through. And just as you would with any concrete installation, dam all doorways, heating, and air vents to prevent the underlayment from going where it is not intended. After you've primed the plywood subfloor, attach 3.2 or 3.4 galvanized expanded diamond metal lathe by stapling approximately every 6 inches. Overlap adjacent pieces of lathe by approximately 1 inch. The lathe may be applied while the primer is wet by walking directly on the mesh. As a note, you can substitute plastic lathe where electrical floor warming systems will be installed. This will reduce the risk of damaging wires. Be sure not to use staples that are too long. Long staples can damage wiring or plumbing beneath the subfloor. 1-inch staples are quite sufficient. You'll save time and speed up your process if you open the bags and stage the materials before you begin mixing. Bostik self-leveling products cover about 15 square feet per 50-pound bag over stapled lathe. Be sure to assess the amount of dry material you'll need before beginning your mix and application. When mixing, always add the powder to the pre-measured liquid. Single bags of underlayment may be mixed in 5-gallon pails, or you can use a barrel to mix multiple bags. Mix until the underlayment is smooth and lump-free. You should be prepared to pour the underlayment as soon as possible. Whether you're hand troweling the material or using an underlayment rake, be careful not to overwork the product. The best performance will be achieved if you allow SL150 to do what it's designed for, as a self-leveling underlayment. In the end, your result will be a smooth, flat, high-strength wire-reinforced underlayment that is laminated to the plywood subfloor. This layer typically adds 3/8 to 1/2 inch of elevation while eliminating nearly all high and low spots. Bostik SL150 is ideal for large format tile installations. It mixes and applies quickly and is extremely easy to work with whether your job site is residential or commercial. With a little practice and planning, preparation, mixing, and pouring of self-levelers is an easy process that produces an ideal substrate. If you have any questions or need further information, contact the Bostik Technical Service Department at 1-800-523-6530 or visit us on the web at www.bostik-us.com. Bostik, an investment in what your future holds.